Hello everyone, and welcome to War in Middle-earth, The War of the Ring, a multi-part series on the final and most important conflict of the Third Age, where new heroes would rise and old villains would fall. In this episode, we look at the hunt for the ring, Sauron's secret operation that would bring him within arm's reach of his long-lost weapon, the One Ring. In the very beginning of January 3017, Gollum is captured within Mordor. Gollum has been searching for the One Ring for over 70 years, but due to not knowing where the Shire is located, his search ends up being fruitless. By 2980, the corruption that the One Ring had set within him inevitably pulls him towards Mordor, where he first meets Shelob. Eventually, he is captured by Sauron. And I might add, sources differ for when exactly he was captured. Some say years earlier, others say as late as 3017. Either way, Sauron gets something from him he did not expect. Information on what could only be the One Ring. This information doesn't amount to much. He gets a name, Baggins, a name Sauron has never heard before. He also gets a location, the Shire. He doesn't get anything else. Gollum himself doesn't know much, and what little he does know, he falsifies, because despite how wretched he is, Gollum is smart and a tough nut to crack. In fact, Gollum hints that he believes the Shire is near to the lands of his own people once inhabited, the Gladden Fields. This, of course, is not true. Because he's such a nice person, Sauron lets Gollum free. Okay, no, not really. He does it for two reasons. One, he believes there is malice within Gollum that will see him do some harm before the end. And two, he believes that if he releases Gollum, Gollum might unwittingly lead him to the Shire. And this isn't a bad idea, as Gollum has some inkling in which direction the Shire might be. However, this plan immediately falls apart, as mere days after being released, Gollum is captured by Aragorn within the Dead Marshes, a place where Sauron's servants fear to go. This is a disaster for Sauron. Not only has his plan been foiled, but now there's danger of his enemies knowing that Sauron is aware of the One Ring. It should be noted that Sauron doesn't know who Aragorn is at this point, and his spies simply state that Gollum has been captured by a man. It should also be made clear that despite learning the name, the Shire, Sauron's many spies and servants are unable to bring him any news of this place. Any spies who get close to the Shire are either killed or driven off by the Dunedain Rangers, or are deliberately misled by Saruman's spies and servants. Saruman is aware of Gandalf's keen interest in the Shire, and of course, if the One Ring is in the Shire, then he doesn't want Sauron to know of it. However, Sauron also becomes aware of the actions of Saruman's servants, and he realizes the White Wizard is very much in it for himself. Aragorn, with a captured Gollum in tow, makes his way north, swimming across the Anduin at first, and then following up the western bank. Upon passing the Gladden Fields, he's helped across the Anduin by the Beornings, and reaches Thranduil in mid-March. I'm not sure why Aragorn took Gollum to Thranduil specifically, but Aragorn's journey does not go unnoticed, as spies from Dol Guldur note Aragorn and Gollum's passing, and report it to Camul, the Easterling. When Gandalf visits Thranduil shortly afterwards, he is easily identifiable, and Sauron knows for sure that his enemies are aware of his capture of Gollum. Sauron immediately begins drawing up plans to remedy the situation. Due to the ineffectiveness of his other servants, he decides that the only servants he can trust to hunt for the One Ring are the Nazgul. He also needs to deal with the situation of Gollum's captivity, either by killing or recapturing Gollum, or by at least freeing him from Thranduil. Thus he decides on a two-pronged assault to fulfill his goals, an attack on Gondor to test Gondor's strength, but to also get the Nazgul across the river secretly. The second assault will be on Thranduil so that he might kill, capture or free Gollum. While this is happening, Gandalf returns to the Shire, works out that Bilbo's ring is in fact the One Ring, and decides to seek Saruman for advice, not knowing that Saruman has turned traitor. On the 20th of June 3018, Sauron launches his assault, one on Osgiliath and one on Thranduil. Both attacks are successful. The attack on Osgiliath is initially a disaster for the Gondorians, as the Witch King briefly reveals himself in his full terror, causing many of the Gondorian soldiers to flee across the western bank. However, the situation is soon brought under control, and although the Gondorians cannot hold Osgiliath's east, a rear guard manages to drive the orcs back and hold the eastern bank until the bridge that crosses the river has been destroyed. Of this rear guard, the only survivors are Boromir, Faramir, and two others, who manage to swim across the river. At this point, Sauron calls off his assault, having achieved his objective of getting the Nazgul across the river. He finds the valor of the Gondorians greater than he hoped, But he is also little concerned, having only committed a small portion of his strength to the attack. The attack on Thranduil also takes the Wood Elves by surprise. It occurs when the Wood Elves, moved to pity by Gollum's state, allowed him to climb a tree under a constant guard. When the attack began, Gollum was able to escape in the confusion, fleeing westwards towards Anduin. Pursued by both the elves and Sauron's servants, he eventually finds his way into Moria and quickly loses his sense of direction. There, he would remain until the timely arrival of the Fellowship when he was close to starvation. Meanwhile, the 6 Nazgul who cross the Anduin head west and then north, reaching the Wold in Rohan by the beginning of July. There they receive horses and raiments, and the first plan is to search near to the Gladden Fields, where they know that Isildur lost the One Ring. It's hoped by them that the land of the Shire might be nearby. By the 22nd of July, they had reached the fields of Celebrant, where they met Camul and the 2 other Nazgul from Dol Guldur. Camul informs the Witch King that he has searched in the area around the Gladden Fields and had found no land called the Shire, and had discovered that the villages inhabited by the Stores, who Gollum belonged to, had long been deserted. Despite this, the Witch King still intends on seeking northward and doesn't call off the search until September. While this is happening, Gandalf arrives at Isengard on the 10th of July. There, Saruman reveals his true colours and has Gandalf imprisoned atop Orthanc. He spends the next 2 months in captivity, much to the concern of Frodo, who has been expecting news from Gandalf by this point. The Nazgul return to the Wold and meet with messengers from Barad-dûr. Sauron doesn't exactly hide his displeasure, roasting the Nazgul so bad that even the Witch King is dismayed. He gives them new orders: go to Isengard and speak to Saruman. This is because Sauron has learned of Boromir's dream and his departure to Rivendell, as well as Saruman's imprisonment of Gandalf. Through these events, he realizes that the Wise must not have the One Ring yet, and that it still must be in the hands of the so-called Halfling. This the Nazgul do, arriving at Isengard on the 20th of September, merely 2 days after Gandalf escaped on Gwaihir the Eagle. Saruman now finds himself in deep shit. He's now an open traitor to the Free Peoples, and he has Sauron's most powerful servants at his doorstep. Saruman now must think of an excuse, and he must think of it fast. Fortunately for himself, Saruman is incredibly cunning. Through the power of his voice, he tells the Nazgul that he has no real knowledge of the One Ring, and he buys himself more time by telling the Witch King that Gandalf recently escaped, and that he's the only one who knows where the One Ring is located. This is a half-truth. Saruman doesn't truly know where the One Ring is located, but he has his suspicions, and he conceals this from the Witch King. Whether the Witch King believes Saruman is unknown, but it's irrelevant, as he does not have the strength to take Isengard. His only hope is to find Gandalf, who has fled somewhere into Rohan, so he and his fellow Nazgul depart. Unfortunately for Saruman, the next evening the Nazgul happen upon Grima Wormtongue, who was travelling to Isengard to inform Saruman of Gandalf's presence in Edoras. Grima obviously lacks the fortitude of his master, and fearing for his life, he spills the beans. "Spare me, I speak as swiftly as I may, west through the gap of Rohan yonder, and then north and a little west, until the next great river bars the way, the Grey Flood it is called. Thence from the crossing at Farbad, the old road will lead you to the borders. The Shire they call it. Yea, verily, Saruman knows of it. Goods come to him from that land down the road. Spare me, lord, indeed I will say naught of our meeting to any that live." The Witch King decides to spare Grima, believing that Grima will not inform Saruman of their meeting, which he doesn't, and that Grima is evil and will eventually do harm to Saruman, which he does. Through this encounter, the Witch King now has a rough idea of the Shire's location. He divides the Nazgul into 4 pairs, and he rides ahead with the swiftest of these pairs, passing through Minhiriath. The few men who inhabit these lands flee in terror at the passing of the Nazgul, but the Nazgul do manage to capture 2 spies of Saruman, one of whom has maps and charts of the Shire. Having proven useful, the Nazgul send this man to Bree as a spy in service of Mordor, while they continue on towards the Shire. Thus, near to dawn on the 22nd of September, the Nazgul grouped near Sarn Ford, and found the ford held against them by the Dunedain Rangers. Some of these fled north, hoping to bring news to their captain, Aragorn, who was currently near Bree. None of these men were successful, and were either killed or driven away into the wilderness. Still, some of the Rangers managed to hold the ford while the day lasted, when the Nazgul were at their weakest, but as night fell, the Lord of Morgul swept them away and took the ford. By the early hours of the 23rd, the Nazgul have entered the Shire. The following events are very well detailed in the Fellowship of the Ring, and I'm going to take you through a rough day-by-day of what happened. On the 23rd, 4 of the Nazgul enter the Shire, and Camul the Easterling reaches Hobbiton. The 5 other Nazgul stop pursuing the Rangers and begin to watch the Greenway that leads east towards Bree. Frodo Baggins, Samwise Gamgee, and Peregrine Took leave this same day, narrowly missing Camul as he questions the old Gaffer. Far to the south, Gandalf has only just tamed Shadowfax and now begins his panicked journey north. Thankfully for him, Shadowfax is actually part Ferrari. On the 24th, Frodo has several near misses with a Nazgul on the borders of the South Farthing, but manages to escape thanks to the arrival of a company of wandering elves, led by Gildor and Glorion. The Nazgul are afraid of the elves and avoid them. To the south, Gandalf crosses the Isen. On the 25th, a Nazgul speaks to Farmer Maggot, but is kindly told to piss off. Frodo arrives at Maggot's house shortly afterwards, and the farmer escorts him towards the Buckleberry Ferry, where they meet Meriadoc Brandybuck. They cross the Brandywine River and reach Crickhollow, where they meet Fredegar Fatty Bolger. The next 3 days see the hobbits pass through the Old Forest and the Barrow Downs, with the timely help of Tom Bombadil. The Nazgul are also active in Bree on the 26th, and on the 28th, Gandalf reaches Sarn Ford. On the 29th, Frodo reaches Bree at nightfall, even as Gandalf also speaks to the old Gaffer. In the early hours of the following day, the Nazgul attack both Crickhollow and the Prancing Pony. At Crickhollow, Fatty Bolger drives them off. No, I'm joking, but he does run very fast. In Bree, the situation is a little different, and there are theories that suggest the attacks were actually launched by the Nazgul's mannish allies. But this is also unsuccessful due to Aragorn's vigilance. That morning, Aragorn leads the hobbits out of Bree, narrowly missing Gandalf, who arrives that night. Realizing he has narrowly missed the hobbits, Gandalf leaves Bree on the 1st of October. However, he is riding a horse Ferrari, and Aragorn has led the hobbits off-road. On the night of the 3rd, Gandalf is attacked by the Nazgul on Weathertop, even as Frodo sees evidence of the battle from the Midgewater Marshes. Gandalf flees the next morning, leading 4 of the Nazgul away to the north. He is seemingly pursued for the next few days before turning east towards Rivendell. On the 6th, Aragorn and the hobbits reach Weathertop, and at night they are attacked by 5 of the Nazgul just beneath the summit. The Witch King manages to stab Frodo with a Morgul blade, but retreats after Aragorn attacks them with fire. However, the Nazgul believe their objective is complete, as the Morgul wound will soon turn Frodo into an obedient wraith. The Nazgul then move eastwards, knowing that the Ringbearer's only hope of salvation would lie in Rivendell. They guard the bridge, the last bridge over the Mathifel, even as their 4 companions begin to return from the north. Over the next few days, Aragorn leads his companions south of the Greenway as Frodo's condition worsens. When they reach the last bridge on the 13th, they find it clear of enemies and find a barrel that has been left behind as a token. This was left behind by none other than Glorfindel, legendary Noldor and Balrog Slayer. Elrond unleashes him from Rivendell on the 9th. He drives 5 of the Nazgul from the last bridge on the 11th, and eventually finds Frodo on the 18th, the same day that Gandalf reaches Rivendell. Realizing that he may have miscalculated, the Witch King knows he can no longer wait. The Ringbearer has proven more resilient than he expected, and the presence of Glorfindel has made their job far more difficult. Regrouped once again, the 9 Nazgul attack on the 20th of October, and Glorfindel orders his horse, Asphalloth, to bear Frodo to Rivendell while the others travel on foot. Once Frodo crosses the ford of Bruinen, he stupidly orders Asphalloth to stop so he can defy the Nazgul by raising his sword. This sword promptly shatters into pieces, courtesy of the Witch King's magic, and the Witch King and 2 other Nazgul order their horses into the water, likely because they were the 3 Númenórean Nazgul. The other 6 Nazgul are more hesitant, possibly afraid of the water that might contain elvish magic. However, this suddenly becomes beyond their control, as Aragorn and Glorfindel appear behind them, driving them into water with fire. Just at this moment, a flash flood in the shape of white horses engulfs the ford, flooding it and washing the Nazgul and their cursed mounts away. After exactly 4 long months, the hunt for the ring has come to a sudden, yet poetic end. This is a catastrophe for Sauron. The One Ring has now reached Rivendell, a strong refuge of his enemies, and the Nazgul have been rendered impotent and now must retreat to Mordor or Dol Guldur. You might wonder, why is this so bad for Sauron? The One Ring is still far from Mount Doom. Surely it can stay in Rivendell as long as it wants. Well, Sauron isn't worried about someone attempting to destroy the One Ring. It's inconceivable to him. But someone using the One Ring against him, that's something he fears. And in Rivendell are several individuals who could use his weapon against him. Gandalf, Elrond, Glorfindel. If one of those people attempts to wrest control of the One Ring from Sauron, then the War of the Ring might be over before it begins. But there's nothing Sauron can do about this now, and he can only continue to plan for war. But at least Sauron is unassailable in his land of Mordor. Saruman is not. The White Wizard has played a dangerous game and is now a known traitor to both sides. He can only have faith in his own plans now, gather his forces and attempt to acquire the One Ring by any means necessary. But if that fails, then he must be on the winning side. And if he wants forgiveness from Lord Sauron, then he needs to deliver something that can make up for his past transgressions. Rohan. Thank you for watching this long video. I hope you enjoyed it, or at least found it interesting. If you want to read more about the Hunt for the Ring, you can find several versions of it in the Unfinished Tales. The version I used was version A, the most commonly accepted version, but there's also versions B, C, and D, which contain both minor and major changes. Read the pinned comment if you haven't, because I'm using it to address something interesting. Cheers, thanks, and remember, don't be lazy like the Witch King. If you're in reach of something, take it.